This video is about building a scale brass model by Bruce Von Stetina. It will show the steps taken in the building of a 1931 Fairbanks Morse automatic 50-ton coaling station. The first step in building any model is locating a good set of plans. Plans for this model were found in the ATSF archives. A period photo was also used for reference. The photo was very valuable as it shows the real thing in place. The concrete base. The base was built of 3/16" plywood. When it was finished, it was painted a concrete color. The correct size I-beams were cut to size on a mini table saw using a 230-tooth jeweler's slotting blade. Code 83 rails were soldered to the tops. A miniature chisel was used to cut slots into the sloping ends of the receiving pit to accept the I-beams. Bruce makes his own mini chisels from dental picks. These were also used to gently scrape off any excess solder or solder staining. The mini table saw was set up with a 230-tooth jeweler's slotting blade to cut 10/1000 thick brass strips from a sheet for the breaker bars. The fence was set to the width needed. A piece of thick hard cardboard was taped down onto the table and the blade raised up through it. This gave a zero-tolerance setup which kept the thin sheet from slipping under the fence. A very simple jig was made for cutting and drilling the breaker bars. Scissors were used to cut the bars along the edge of the jig. There are 52 bars of each length. A fine diamond file was run along the edges of the bars to clean any burrs off the edges in preparation for soldering. A mini drill press with a number 76 drill was used to make 3 holes in each bar using the jig. There are 3 sections at 6-inch spacing. The short wooden walls were next to go on. The posts are 4x6 and the planks are 3x10. The left and right side elevation plans were laid out and taped to a building board with 2-sided tape. L angles were bent on the pattern for the bucket rails to match the drawing. A slot was cut in a round dowel to use for bending them. Special bending pliers were also used to finish them. As the lengths of brass were bent, the angle was flattened back out on small anvils. The bent bucket rails were then taped onto the drawings and assembled onto their gusset plates. Gussets are plates that connect joints. The gussets are made from strips of 5/1000 thick brass sheet cut on a table saw and cut to length on a chopper. A razor blade cuts deeply enough to be able to fold them back and forth, breaking them off. Holes were drilled for the rivets using a number 80 drill in the drill press. A very sharp awl is used to center punch for the drill before drilling. 28-gauge soft brass wire was used for the rivets. The wire was cleaned until bright, then stretched to just before the breaking point. This hardens and straightens the wire. The stretching caused the wire to shrink to a smaller diameter that is just right for the holes. Short pieces of wire were inserted into the holes, one group of holes at a time. After putting a bit of flux on each wire, it was soldered into place. A special soldering machine was used. After the wires are in, they are snipped off close, then filed down. The whole thing is cleaned again, going around each rivet to remove the flashing left by filing. It's done this way rather than on the rivet machine because the gussets are so tiny. The large gussets were done on the riveting table. Pre-drilled L-angle base pieces were put onto the tower sides that would later connect the tower to the pit, then the 2 sides were connected. Next, the angled braces were soldered onto the gussets. Now the beams for under the winch house were put on, then the house's floor. Next, the uprights for the sheave assemblies. Pillow blocks for the sheave shafts were made and soldered into place. The sheave towers were assembled, each piece soldered into place, and the sheaves put on. The house walls were laid out. drawn directly onto the sheet and cut out with all the walls in one piece, end to end. The house was built out of 10/1000ths sheet. A mini draw knife made from an old hacksaw blade was used to make cuts at the corners of the house. The window and door openings were cut out, then the draw knife groove was made. The groove made the bending of the sheet easy and gave sharp bends. The window was put into place as well as the door. Then the sheet was folded up to form the house and soldered together. The wall assembly was then soldered onto its floor. The roof was put on next, first putting a slot in it for the winch cable. The coal receiving bin up on the tower is next. Again, the shape is drawn directly onto a brass sheet and cut out. The riveting table was used to add rivet impressions to match the photo. The small lower part of it will go on next. It was made from a piece of heavy strip stock. It was drilled for the hinge shaft of the chute and then soldered onto the bin. The chute, what is called an apron, is now made. The chute is made of sheet brass with the same technique used to make the house and the coal receiving bin. A shaft is put through for a chute hinge. Using a tiny punch setup, washers were made and soldered onto the shaft. These serve to keep it in place but leave the chute movable. The punch is 2 steel plates with 2 locator pins to keep the plates registered. The pins are soldered to one plate. A hole the size of the washer OD was drilled through both plates. A strip of 5/1000ths brass was drilled with the shaft size. The strip was put between the 2 plates, centering the drilled hole in the punch plate hole. The bin and apron assembly is now soldered onto the tower. The bucket is made, and a cable will be attached leading over the sheave and into the winch house roof. Rigging the chute. Brass rod is put over the sheave for the chute. The counterbalance weights are made and put onto tiny chain. The weights are put in place and the chains are cut to their final length. The chains are attached using S-links to the mounts on the tower. Final assembly. Pre-drilled holes in the big base L angles are used to mark the bolt hole placement in the cement at the bucket opening in the concrete pit. These are then drilled. Long bolts and washers are soldered into place. The completed tower is finally set onto the concrete base. The ladder is made using a special jig and then put into place. A plywood structure was made with track to go under the chute in order to make a more complete look for display. A brass structure like this one cannot be beaten for realism. For example, a tiny HO scale hand will fit over a ladder rung. Bruce Von Stetina's original models are made to become heirlooms that can be passed on to future generations of railroad modelers. They are archival in nature with no materials that will deteriorate or become brittle with age. Check out the Von Stetina Artworks website for more information, and thank you for taking the time to watch our video.